Okay, thanks Tanya for being on In the Field with me.
Thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your beginnings and what you're currently up to all the way through to your performance at Summit. Um, was piano always your first instrument?
Piano was always my first instrument.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel most comfortable with.
Mm.
I've had a go playing other instruments. Like I used to play the bassoon,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that I started with the piano and I just feel at home with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were you a very young age? Or?
I was about 6 or 7 when I started. But the thing is, the piano just arrived at home. My whole family play instruments, so it was automatic that the piano was there.
Oh.
And I remember when the piano first arrived, I actually didn't know how to play it, so I stood up and played it from the side and thought that was the way to play the piano. Oh. But strangely enough, I'm still doing that now.
Yeah, I know.
So what's changed? And it's also when I look back, I think how did I really engage with it when I first started? And my friends used to, kids used to have play dates, and so my friends would come around, and there'd all be girls who liked dancing, and I would just sit at the piano and improvise while they danced around the room. And that's what I remember.
Wow, so from the very get-go, you were improvising.
I was improvising.
Working with improvising dancers.
Yes, yeah.
So it was kind of a portent to the future.
Yeah, so sometimes there's a few little tunes I used to play when I was 6 or 7. So sometimes, because I spent a bit of my time growing up in Australia, and my grandmother had a piano, and I used to do these little tunes that were really slow, going all the way down the piano and going all the way up. And sometimes I still use those tunes.
Yeah, that's great.
Running out of material.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
so you said your family was musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad's musical. He plays the violin and he can play by ear.
Right.
And he used to sing. He's retired now, but he used to sing. And he almost was singing professionally. He was singing part professionally, but he didn't have time to keep it going. And my mum always played the piano, and the whole family did. I used to remember hearing my mum accompany my dad singing. Yeah.
Wow. Did you study music as well at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, when people say, "Where did you study?" and "When did you study?" it's like,
no, I just was wondering if you did study.
I've been doing it for so long, and so I guess the last time I officially studied the piano was when I was completing when I was doing my master's course at Goldsmiths College in London, which is in New Cross, and it was a really exciting place to study because there's a really big art faculty there. They're well known for the Brit Art bunch who came out in the 90s of Charles Saatchi and all that, but a lot of the artists were there, and I think that sort of experimentation and this idea of being able to interact with different mediums really was something that was part of the music faculty when I was there. I don't know what it's like now, but I was really fortunate to have John Tilbury as my piano teacher. And it was really interesting because when I arrived, I mean, I hadn't met John yet. It was just fortuitous that he happened to be there because I'd had, over the years when you're studying an instrument, you have, a number of teachers, and each teacher has something that they teach you, and then at some point you move on, do something else, and then you may need another teacher to teach you something else. And I remember when I went to Goldsmiths, I already had a technique that I developed because I had an amazing teacher called Stephen Coombs, who was like a Russian 19th century, early 20th century piano expert, and he was teaching me that big virtuosic sound, that use your whole body and use all your fingers and lift your fingers up, all that, which was really different to what I'd ever learned before when you're, just don't learn that, how to make that big sound when you're playing, you know, grades or something. And then when I turned up in Goldsmiths, I remember in the first week I was thinking, well, yeah, there's piano teachers here, I'm not sure who to study with, and I remember talking to friends saying, oh, you know, who is an interesting, good piano teacher, who has interesting repertoire, who's really amazing, and then they said, well, John Tilbury's your man. John Tilbury's your man. And then I remember sitting outside John's room, and there'd be these students going in and out, and I looked through the door, and they would be kind of not really playing the piano very much, entering into these sort of not arcane, but these like exchanging secret information, and there'd be like a group of 5 students who would go in and out, and they'd go in and they'd come out looking completely different, as if, you know, life has changed for them. And so I thought, oh yeah, well, it's John, okay. So I met John and asked him whether he would be all right to teach me, and he said yeah, and that's how I got into a lot of the experimental music.
I was curious about that.
I play now. But before that, I think even, especially when I was a teenager, I was already starting to play things like, I was already playing some Schoenberg and Bartók, Satie and late Debussy, and then I really liked kind of quite repertoire that was more exploring colour and sound already then, but it was John who really just said, well, why don't you commission a composer to do this? Why don't you try doing this? And I'd never really thought that was possible, do you know what I mean? Because when you're in this sort of enclosed, more traditional piano world, you don't necessarily think that, hey, there's a composer who lives up the road who I know, there's some people who you can play with, and that's how it happened. And I remember that John was asked to play a concert of Earl Brown's music in the Union Chapel in London, and there was a whole load of music that he was given, and there was one piece, I think it was music for cello and piano, and he said, do you want to play this in the concert? I said yeah. And it was full of extended piano techniques, and it was more time-space notation, and because he knew I could play all that kind of thing, because, you know, he'd introduced me to all this stuff. That's how I got performing, that's how I started really performing more experimental and contemporary music, and that was actually shortly a year before Earl Brown died. But Earl Brown, I thought it was absolutely amazing. It's a big influence, Earl Brown.
So you had a lot of living examples then. Sounds like in your life.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our colleagues, you know, recorded music is a big part. Was recorded music at all within that range as well, or was it really just the act of doing? That's what it sounds like. But
a lot of recorded music I used to listen to.
Yeah, just curious. You know.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit weird actually, because I don't know.
Aren't
no,
we
it's
all?
probably not weird, but I mean maybe it's no. I'm sure that it's the same for a lot of musicians. That you know, there's one music that they play, but there's also music that they grew up with and music that they listen to. And I remember when I was growing up in London, because my parents, I was born in London. My parents would listen to. I would listen to lots of like Top of the Pops. They don't play Top of the Pops now. That's something that I really miss. I'm still watching the BBC looking at Top of the Pops from like, you know, the best hits of the 1970s.
Sure.
Look at the Pans People and stuff like that. It's
Right.
amazing. But I used to watch Top of the Pops religiously. And my parents listened to a lot of classical music. My father would have classical music floating around the house all the time, but he would also have a bit of Motown and quite a lot of jazz, like Ella and Billie Holiday, you know, Nat King Cole, and also my mum used to listen to Elvis, as well as like Beethoven's piano concertos, and then and ABBA. And then when I was at university, I just used to go to the record library. And there were LPs and there were CDs, and I used to just look at covers that I thought were interesting. I sort of had no idea what they were. I just like grab them and go home. And so I think I missed out on quite a lot when it was happening, like Kate Bush and punk and Kraftwerk, and then things that I never got to hear, such as I don't know, chamber music by I don't know, Schoenberg. and things like that. And I used to just get all this out of the library and spend ages listening to it. And now, at the moment, I'm listening to loads of techno electro pop. So I think I listen to everything apart from country.
Yeah. Well, that's okay.
But I think Dolly Parton has an amazing voice.
Well, yeah. Right.
She's incredible. I will only listen to Dolly Parton.
Yeah. Okay.
Love her. She's great.
So, when was the first time that you worked in an ensemble setting? Then, you know, and was it with piano or was there? I mean, you obviously you use other other devices.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you know, was it how that came
happens.
about in terms of going from, you know, piano, which is a very solitary instrument,
It is.
and especially you came from an educational process with that, you know, you're playing the piano, you know, maybe with another, you know, a duo. But what about like, you know, working in ensemble?
Yeah,
work?
I think the first ensemble I worked in, really big ensemble, was with. Oh no, it wasn't. When I used to play the bassoon, I played in orchestras. That was the first official ensemble I played in, but I hated playing the orchestra. I was stuck in the back. The conductors always looked at the violinist and talking about like down bowing, up bowing all the whole time, so that was really boring. And then after that, when I was at Goldsmiths, I started improvising, and that's really when I was starting to work with ensembles, improvising with piano. And also for that Earl Brown concert that I mentioned, we were doing, you know, a large ensemble with piano and Morton Feldman's music. I think we did one with harp, and I can't remember the name of the piece, but it was for about 8 people, but it was notated. And then I used to play in the London Improvisers Orchestra as well.
Okay.
But then, how did I get into toys and stuff? Because when I was at Goldsmiths, I was really interested in Cardew, and he wrote a piece called Memories of You, and that was all about. It was like a kind of. It wasn't a graphic score. It was a score that had a picture of a piano on it and little dots, and you could bring in whatever objects you liked to make the sounds in relation to the piano, but not necessarily on the piano. And then I was starting to like do lots of research on Rauschenberg and Fluxus and found objects, and also playing a lot of Cage and the idea of like, you know, bringing the world in and having the world interacting with you and what you're doing, even in a concert hall, was something that I was really interested in. So then it sort of became normal when I was playing Cardew's Memory of You that to actually just bring in other objects that you could just bring in and play. And then that's what started to happen. And then I met Steve Beresford, and he was doing that too. He was coming from the Duchamp surrealist idea as well. And we collaborated on an album together. And I just brought all my toys and stuff and anything I collected. He would lend me things, and then we just sat in his front room and did that. And then pretty much from that time and before that onwards, I kept on playing with toys and terrible, cheap electronic gadgets that I think are really great to use, but I think people who are much more high-tech, I think it's very, very limited.
But it's not a, you know, it's a worldwide phenomenon. You know, I mean, there are musicians that I've run into from all over the world that, you know, use lo-fi objects for what it's worth, you know, and analog and you know, little noisemakers, things like that. So there's I mean, I hear of toy orchestras all over the globe, you know. So it makes sense that, you know, you were, when you connected with that music, that you were also made the connection to objects. And tell me a little bit about the you mentioned the Improvisers Orchestra?
The London Improvisers Orchestra.
What was that all about?
Oh, it's amazing. It's I think the practice of improvising in London is a really established. It's a really big established thing that's been happening since what, the 70s, 80s, and it's a continuation of that. So you've got, you know, it's Derek Bailey, Steve Beresford, David Toop, all of them were like involved in improvising ensembles at various times, and the one that's really been going on probably for the longest now has been the London Improvisers Orchestra, and they record every single, I mean not record, they perform every single month.
Okay. They're still going today,
they're
right?
still really, and it's a great way to get together, play with musicians that you've never worked with before, meet new musicians, and the thing that I always loved are the conductions. I love the conductions. Mainly because it's so extraordinary. Thinking about all the amazing ways that people can conduct, and I don't know, it's like a lateral way of, because I actually cannot stand conductors.
Oh.
I mean, orchestral conductors.
Right.
I find them very difficult, and they can be very dictatorial, and they can be really, really mean and nasty to people, because, I don't know, whatever their objective is, it's like dictator objectives. So the conductions are really great, because generally it's improvisers who are conducting, and they also bring something of their own composition to the piece. So you might get a little score which is read, and then you just interact with it, or it might be that you look at someone's body and they're just moving around, and then you kind of get involved with the feel of it. There was one chap called Terry Day. I mean, he's not a chap, he's great. He's a great musician, Terry Day. And he's a sound poet, and he's an amazing musician. He was in a couple of punk bands, and he plays drums as well as pipa, and he brings in a little text or doesn't dance around, but he just says, he'll say a poem and then he'll repeat the words and over again, and then he uses the actions and people just go with it, and then there's an amazing wash of sound that happens. And then there was one conduction, I remember this Adam Bowman, who plays found objects, but sort of, I can't explain it, it's sort of everything you can find in your kitchen sink and everything in your garage, and he brings it in, and it's almost like invented instruments, but not quite invented. It's amplified objects, and he did this conduction which was about the dolphin. There was a TV show about a dolphin in Australia. You may know, it's like Daffy the Dolphin or something. So he would just make us all read bits of the scripts from one particular TV show about this dolphin. And whenever we said a certain word that had a letter, that would then be the start for us to actually do something musical with that. But it felt like it was a work in progress, but it was so fun to do and completely insane.
How about yourself? Were you?
Oh God,
were you involved in the conduction
I'm
as well?
too scared to do a conduction.
Really? Not yet, right?
I still can't.
Okay.
There are some people who just have it in them to do conductions.
Yes, that's very true.
I just can't do it. I just don't feel like I can do a conduction.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll come up with one.
Yeah, it is a whole other way of thinking and doing. I agree with you.
I know.
If you've ever experienced Mostagliano's conductions or Josh Allen's conductions, Gina Robert's conductions, Philip Greenleaf here in the local community. And I've tried it numerous times, and it's always been difficult too. So I understand.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in your group that you're bringing to Summit,
Tender Buttons.
Is that collective entity in terms of direction and or are you conducting this trio?
Oh no, we're not. None of us. We're collective in the sense that we're all improvising.
Right. Okay.
And we've just we're in the process of releasing an album.
That's great.
We've just mixed it, and it's Tom Jill will be playing analog synthesizer, and so is Gino, and I'm playing piano.
Oh, you're playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you also incorporating things with the piano too, or
actually
just the piano?
I think I'm going to be playing mainly piano and maybe a few things.
Right.
But it's when we recorded the album, it was quite sparse, pretty hardcore. Sparse.
Hardcore sparse.
Yeah, and with little beats, little analog synthesizer beats. I'm hoping we're going to mix that into an electro pop house track at some point.
Oh, awesome!
Don't tell them. Now you know.
Oops, cat's out of the bag.
But I think it might be. I don't know. It depends on the night. I I was throwing ping pong balls inside the piano.
Really?
So
great.
you know, you never know.
Okay, so we see you come in with a big bag of pinball balls. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there particular? Can you tell us what the title of? Because for folks who don't know what Tender Buttons means, and maybe get an idea of that where the musical direction is coming from.
Okay. The title is from a book called
Okay.
Tender Buttons.
So who wrote the book?
Gertrude Stein.
Okay. Right. Okay. Gertrude Stein.
Shall I read you a bit about the book?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay, I'm
great.
going to read you a bit about Gertrude. Okay, Tender Buttons, the book, is from Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Tender Buttons is a 1914 book by American writer Gertrude Stein consisting of 3 sections titled Objects, Food and Rooms. While the short book consists of multiple poems covering the everyday mundane, Stein's experimental use of language renders the poems unorthodox and their subjects unfamiliar.
Ah.
So, yeah, that's where the title Tender
Right,
Buttons
and
comes from.
the inspiration behind the group concept.
Well, the group concept is that everyone's playing buttons and knobs and I'm pressing keyboards, but the idea of them being tender as opposed to something that's like a gadget,
Right.
which is not tender because it's plastic or metal,
Oh, I see.
is a sort of like, is a sort of mind bender thing, the idea of it.
And you're going to have interactive film as well.
Yeah, we can have interactive film too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you experienced the film, or will
No,
it be
we haven't seen the
spontaneous?
film. No, tomorrow, in
Yeah.
fact, we are going to have our first rehearsal with
Excellent.
the film.
All right.
Yeah.
And Bill Tybalt?
Bill Tybalt, yeah.
Tybalt's doing the
It
film.
will be live,
Mhm.
live film.
Yeah.
I mean, live processed
Right.
film.
Interactive.
Interactive film.
Which is the whole night, pretty much, as far as I know. The film is all the films are interactive in some format.
Yeah.
First, Bill Sue definitely, and then although Mika Pontecorvo's stuff is a little more mysterious, I'm not sure exactly. But
it's really exciting because it will be the first time.
Mhm.
I think it will be the first time I've ever played with interactive film.
Oh.
Because I've played with film before, but most of the films that I've played have been pre-recorded.
Right.
So the idea of doing it into having an interactive film where they're interacting with what we're doing and we're interacting with them is actually quite exciting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very exciting.
And this is actually the first time we're presenting this kind of performance.
Yeah.
Where in the past
really?
we've had film, but
Yeah. Yeah, because I went to Ensemble for the first time
Oh, yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
Where actually I met so many amazing musicians, many of whom I'm working with now, so it was great.
I know.
Really
so
great.
But 1 year later, you've come around, and now you're on stage with us.
I know, I'm really excited.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate talking with you today,
Thank you.
and we'll see you August 1st at the Community Music Center for Outsound New Music Summit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.